Don't adjust your screen. Yes, I'm in camouflage, but I'm moving so you can see me, so it's okay. Coming up next on Ham Nation, I'll keep moving so I'm not just a disemboweled voice. Bob has information on his road trips that he's had all year. We're going to talk about ham radio up in space. We're going to see some viewer mail, not camo. Great family. You're going to love that. Also, Newsline and Solar. We've got Smoke and Solder. We've got chat room questions. We've got Amanda. We've got everything you could need and more than you probably think you should want. But you want it, and you're going to get it. And you're going to get it right now here on Ham Nation.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of Ham Nation is brought to you by Ldg Electronics. Ldg Electronics provides state-of-the-art automatic antenna tuners and related products for every amateur need. Visit ldgelectronics.com to learn more. Buy Hover. Make a name for yourself with Hover. Visit hover.com/twit to get 10% off your first purchase of any domain extension for the entire first year. And buy ICOM. For more information, visit icomamerica.com/hamnation.
This is Ham Nation, episode number 427 for November 6th, 2019. Ham radio in space.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Heil, K9EID, and you are watching Ham Nation. I haven't been here forever, and I'm going to give you a little report as to why and where. But we want to see who is all aboard tonight. Gordon West, how you doing down in California? Is it nice and warm?
It is. We had a great day, perfect antenna weather, and Don was indicating he lost some wire antennas in the last storm. Our motto is, if your antenna survived any storm in California, it wasn't up high enough. Back to you, Bob.
Big enough. Is that what happens? That happened to you, George, for some of your broadcast things? George Thomas, how are you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, Bob. You know, rather than have my antennas fall, I prefer to let them burn right there on the tower. And you can do a real good job with about, a 40 kilowatt transmitter. You can melt that copper like it's ice cream dripping down the sides. So, yeah. No, fortunately, I haven't had any antennas fall from wind at work. Now, at home, that's a different story. But, it's, boy, it has been kind of windy here, and we got cold weather coming. So, Don, you better get on that antenna project before next week. That's all I can say.
And there we go to Don in the New Orleans area. How you doing, Don? You okay?
I'm good. I've got too many other things to fix before I fix. I've got two antennas that are down. The short leg of my 80-meter off-center fed fell in the previous windstorm, and then the ugly balun came unraveled in the latest tropical storm a few weeks ago. But right now, I have to fix the furnace. We don't have any heat in the house, and it was cold last week, and it's going to be cold again. So I got to fix that. But we're going to warm up after the Newsline report tonight with the solar update from Dr. T, and we have some viewer mail. A really nice card from the Pearson family, and we'll share that with you coming up a little bit later on tonight. So and I was gone last week, and it's good to be back with the Ham family here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before I get into my resume, good grief, I've been gone for so long, I'm going to tell you why and where. But I have a note from Val and Jim Idelson, and I want all of you to pay attention. You in the chat room, if you're chatting back, well, listen to me. I want you to take note of this. And here it is. We've got a big program planned for December. It's a 3-part series. Jim Idelson, K1IR, will shed some new light on the topic of tower safety, a topic we take very seriously here at Ham Nation, as all of you know. But his research results in a recommended action that they're all must see for each of us. I got to see a little bit of it, and it's amazing what he's come up with about tower safety. So plan to be here. Let your friends know this, your club maybe, everybody. Save the dates, December the 4th, December the 11th, and December the 18th. And it's critically important that we look at this. This is not just another, it's a show. This is a life-saving event. And Jim has been spending a long time on this. And it's going to behoove all of us to pay attention. So take those dates down, and we'll make sure that you see what's going on and learn a little bit about how to be safe with your towers. Well, as you know, I've been gone. And the reason I'm going to do this tonight is that I have gotten all kinds of emails, phone calls. Are you okay? Are you sick? Where you been? Like, what's going on? Well, here is my itinerary from July the 19th all the way through the 27th and the 17th of October. And it was just crazy. And I have some photos of this. So let's run through a few of these and let you see. That was in the symposium. That happens to be Bob Sherwood. I mean, everybody knows about Bob, and he gave us all kinds of information about how he tests receivers and stuff. It was really great. The symposium was wonderful. And the next one wasn't. It's one of the reasons I love to go to HamFest. This happened to be at the symposium too. But I get to see people that I talk to sometimes for decades and you never met them. And that's the story here. The next one, this one we want to hold a minute, Vic. This is a very interesting shot. That happens to be Peter Frampton. I went to New Orleans in July, then I went to Slidell, but on August the 4th, that was his last concert. He's having muscle problems. We're talking about the Peter Frampton. And what he's holding, back in 1974, I sent him a Christmas present. I sent him a talk box. We had just started building them after Joe Walsh and I came up with the talk box for Rocky Mountain Way. And as you probably well know, the talk box has been the absolute foundation of Peter Frampton's career. And we've been really good friends, but I've been saving this for decades. And I gave it to him. That is the packing slip for when we shipped it. And I took that to the show that night and afterwards gave it to him. And I'm telling you, I don't know who cried the most. Or Sarah had a big fest. It was really wonderful, though. And he's just such a great guy. And I just thought I'd share that. It's a piece of rock and roll history right there. Okay, back to August the 8th. From New Orleans, I took off and went to Ogden, Utah, where I met up with our new CEO. Howard Mickle is something else. We have needed him for a long time in the ARRL. And I do want you to be following his opening monologue in the QST each month. It's really good. And he's got some great ideas that we've needed for a long time. Then we went from there, Ogden, Utah, went down to Huntsville. Good old Huntsville HamFest. I love Huntsville HamFest. And there's a couple of shots there. Some of the other things, that was one of the banquets, by the way, at Ogden. We got them mixed up there. The workshops were full, standing room only. There's one of your buddies, Gordo. That's Roger, yeah. The LED man. Good old Raj. And we meet up at a lot of shows. He's a tremendous guy. You need LEDs? That's the guy. And then we went to Huntsville, and look who shows up. Of course, it's Don. Don and I gave the Young Ham of the Year award, and that was really wonderful. And Huntsville is a great ham fest. Of course, all the Icon guys are there. Gigaparts was there. And I really had a good time with all of these folks. But his was very special at Huntsville. That is a transmitting converter that I owned. And the guy that bought it years ago said he had, my name was on the back of it and all this. He had it at the Huntsville Ham Fest because he knew I was going to be there. The next slide will show you that piece of gear up in kind of the corner in 1960. And through the years, who knows where it went, but he ended up with it. And I just thought that was really kind of a cool deal that he brought that for me to see. So, that's why you go to Huntsville. And there is a big reason. Got to see Mel and Bob manning a DX engineering booth at Huntsville. So you go to Huntsville, you go to Hamfest just to see friends. And this was a big surprise. I have been talking to Bob on AM for years, K4BKC, and he was in one of my workshops. And so another reason that you go is you have a lot of fun, but you get to meet people. Everybody knows that guy, but you probably don't know who it is yet. Do you remember the guy that did the chipstick? Well, that's him. That's Chip. He's probably in the chat room right now. And he came down and spent some time with us, and we had a really, really good time. So in Huntsville, but it's a wonderful ham fest. I then went from Huntsville to Joplin, Missouri, where they have a great flea market fest, lots of tailgaters, but it's all inside. And so I get to go around and see a few things, and once in a while buy a few things. We were just starting to set up. There's Associated Radio over in the right from Kansas City. That was a setup of some of my booth, but I love going to these fests. That was Joplin. But then a very special day on September the 15th. That happens to be Sarah, my wonderful wife, and her first and only grandson. He was about maybe 3 hours old. Was taken in the hospital in St. Louis. And I just thought I'd put that out there because a lot of you know Sarah, and we've talked about Sarah and some of her sons, what's going on with her son. That was Julian, the new grandson. Then I went to Milwaukee for the Superfest. That's always a great fest, and it's held in the Ham Radio store. That store is that huge. It is something special. And I've been going to that thing for decades when it was AES. And finally, we got to meet again Howard Mickle at the Superfest, but he also had Kermit Carlson with him. He's the director, ARRL director for Central Division. So all these wonderful people were there. We had a good time, and Superfest is great. Look who else I saw there. Katie. She was manning the YLRL booth and taking pictures and putting stuff up on the live stream for HRO. But, you know, if I'm in town and I know there's a Wurlitzer somewhere, I find it. Well, one of the guys said, "Hey, we're going over here tonight. Let's go." And I couldn't believe it. There it is. It was in a pizza parlor, and we had a good time. Why not? You got, I think that was about 30 ranks of pipes and a good old 3-manual Wurlitzer. So Milwaukee is well versed with their theater organs. We had a good time. Ray was with us. Then we moved out to California, San Ramon, and set up our display. And of course, we had a nice display of the parametric receive audio system, which is doing very, very well. And who else can be there that's more exciting than Gordo? We kind of share part of the booth. And we had a good time, didn't we, Gordo? Always do at Pacificon. And you really need to put that on your list of things to do next year. But look who's there. That was Drew. Drew was the Ham of the Year that Don and I gave the award to in Huntsville a few weeks earlier. So that was all wonderful stuff to be able to see. He and his father, he gave the keynote speech, and it was really good. So you're going to be hearing a lot from that young man. He's something. And last but not least, they have all kinds of building activities. They had some Boy Scouts building when I shot this. They had about 20 different stations. And of course, I get to visit with them and see what they're building. So there you go. I hope I didn't wear you out with all of this, but I told you I've been gone, and that's why. I had a great summer, though. It was really, really super. And I get to end it next Friday. Well, Saturday, all right. I'm going to open for John Lodge and the Moody Blues. They're coming to the Lincoln Theater here in the St. Louis area in Belleville. And we have a wonderful organ there. I've been playing that organ for years. And we're going to fire up the old organ for the first half hour. So John Lodge, I used to do their sound back in the 70s for the Moody's. So this is going to be a really, really good deal. I'm looking forward to that. So if you're around on the 16th of November, come on down to Belleville. We're just 10 miles or so across the river from St. Louis. So there's what I've been doing. Not to bore all of you, but answer everybody's questions. Are you sick? No, not at all. Where you been? That's where I've been, on airplanes, Uber cars, wherever. But it's been really fun. So we're back in the helm, and appreciate everybody taking care of the shop while I've been gone, and I really appreciate that part of it, sure, too. So Gordo, what have you had for us tonight? It was good to spend some time with you at Pacificon. We had a good time, didn't we?
We did, Bob, and great to see you, and have a great time playing all of the great music that's ahead of you for your upcoming concerts with known legends. Well, certainly we've had a lot of legends in ham radio, and certainly our big push every year is to get more kids involved. And I know you've seen my short shots of kids and so on, but there's a very special way that the American Radio Relay League, as well as NASA, as well as AMSAT, to get kids involved in ham radio. So I thought we would take a quick look of getting kids talking into space. And the American Radio Relay League, AMSAT, ARRL, NASA, they've done such a great job, thanks to Rosalia White, who has worked continuously with me and others. We have been promoting ham radio big time on the International Space Station, but we must remember that the earlier contacts of ham radio go back to the days of working them, we'll say, by hand. And one of the first contacts most of us made to a first space station that was actually the space shuttle was Owen Garriott, W5LFL.
Columbia, passing right over San Francisco at this time, and returning a call to kilowatt 6, Mike Yankee Charlie, right down below me at this time. Your signals are very loud and clear, well above 5 by 9. Also to November 6, Echo Charlie Mike.
So working the International Space Station is indeed in our future. But when we first started out a couple decades ago, it was working the space shuttles. And many of the space shuttles gave those kids that were listening in on this particular one some fun times listening when we put out our call sign. And I want you to know I put out my entire call sign, WB6NOA. But she only got the last couple of letters. Now, she is aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis.
This is your instructor, Gordon West, Whiskey Bravo 6, Nancy, Ocean America. Good job. Keep up the good work.
I imagine there are big pileups when you are in a shuttle passing overhead. Well, of course, the biggie is the International Space Station. And, you know, every time that you get an alert that the space station is going to pass over either bright and early in the morning, way too early, or in the evening hours at sunset, just the right time, be prepared for doing a little APRS and tune in at 145, 825, 25 kilohertz up. And you might get your small little handheld to get a nice hit off of the International Space Station. That's always a big kick when that occurs over the airwaves. Well, know that the space station is one that looks for school contacts, or, as they say, formal and informal educational groups. So it might not have to be an actual school, but maybe a training group for kids. And that's what they're looking for, is to get more kids involved. They've set the schedule for next July through December 2020. And they're now hosting an ARISS contact in the USA. They're hosting folks to write in at www.ariss.org and indicate if you would like to play. But you can only do so up until about 2 weeks from now, because they're going to close down the end of next year, 2 weeks away, November 30th. And you would log on to www.ariss to become one of the space station volunteers and a potential to leading a school to be able to make contact with the International Space Station. And it's a big deal. It's not like your school is nominated because they recognize the name or there's a couple of good hams with the school, but rather a large concerted effort in preparing for science, technology, engineering, and math, and incorporating all that the International Space Station is doing. So study topics related to space technology, space exploration, space research, learn about communications, wireless technology, radio science. This has got to be about an 8-month to a year prep for those students having an opportunity to talk directly to astronauts on the International Space Station. So it's a big deal. And if you're interested, you've got to really act quick, because tomorrow night is going to be one of their webinars. And if you look on their data page on page 2, it talks about the webinar that's going to be available both at 7 as well as 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for those thinking that you might want to get a school involved or an educational institution involved. And for the young kids that might not fully understand the technical side, they come up with some great little posters that you see here well in advance of the contact, once they've been chosen as one of the schools to take part. And the big deal is flexibility. That's what Rosalie says. You got to be flexible, because it might be a week before you've got all the announcements out and there's a change of personnel schedules aboard the space station. So the school may have to wait until another day or so. So the kids throughout the school year, in preparation for their contact with the International Space Station, gets a lot of training from some of these International Space Station landside volunteers. And one of the training is, of course, a little history about the International Space Station. And then the young kids will come up with some really neat history stuff and get it posted. And this is all part of the presentation so that your school that you're going to be representing and bringing onto the pad to launch a signal to the International Space Station is going to indeed make it. So it takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of documentation. It takes a local expert in your area that will be working with NASA and AMSAT to make sure that everything's going well. And as you see here, it takes the enthusiasm of the kids to get planning for it. And you're going to find that the local clubs in your area, once they hear that on November 12th, you're going to make contact with the International Space Station, that's like a year away, they're going to begin to mount up and offer to the school all sorts of demonstrations. And, of course, drones always get the kids' attention. You see that off to the right. But then they've got APRS. They've got all sorts of other things. So kids go, wow, this is going to be more than just kids yakking with an astronaut. And, again, the drones really illustrate a lot of dynamics. And this is what we did in the Quartz Fest space station contact a couple years ago. And then, of course, is the technical side. And for the absolute ultimate contact, you're not going to need 100 watts. 50 watts, 40 watts is going to be fine because the space station is in clear view. And here we have one of the school space station contact personnel getting everything tuned in and turned on. And the pass is going to be from the west to the east. And everything was good. But, you know, a couple days before, they said, let's do a dry run. Take a look at that setup. Everything is great. Well, it was until the setup started to track what would be the space station. And when it got due north, the rotor locked up and said, wait a minute, I've got to spin all the way around to continue tracking it. So we got around that by changing the rotator 180 degrees. But it takes experts like you see here that will envision things that, gosh, we never even thought about that. I'm very happy to report the cross-polarized antennas brought the space station in absolutely loud and clear, even before it came up over the western horizon and well beyond when it set on the eastern horizon. Here's another school setup. They've got it on the roof there. It's temporary, of course. And this also has ASL, computer controlled, and they were ready to work the International Space Station on their time. But one of the rules for working the International Space Station as a school contact on their scheduled date is that you have to have backups for everything. And I know you folks in the chat room, hams, we got backups to backups. So they were ready. They didn't need to use this. This is the M² setup, but they were ready for the backups. And yes, the contacts are on 2 meters, 145, 800 to hear the space station. And their uplink is on... Well, no, we're not going to tell you where their uplink is. It's not any published uplink. It's one. It could even be an alternate band. I never got word where it was, but they keep the uplink absolutely private, so there's not a chance that they're accidentally going to have a signal come on top of them. Now, this is Neil Hayes, W6FOG. Working down with the La Paz Valley group during or just before the Quartz Fest, Ham Fest in January. He was ready. And through the cooperation of Ham Radio Outlet, where he was originally employed years ago, they donated a ton of gear, and we thank HRO and all the other suppliers for coming up with this. And this is what makes working the space station real easy, and that is the automatic tracking software that Neil had set up. And thanks again, Neil, for all your support of working the International Space Station. Alternate locations may have the same type of tracking software, may use a larger radio. There's the ICOM ready to roll there. And they got backup power supplies. But most important, look at the kids. For over a 9-month period, they've been not grilled, but taught all about working the International Space Station and what it's going to be like. And, of course, making that first contact with the space station, there's always sort of a fun thing as to what's happening. Is it light or is it dark? And how do you get used to light and dark on the space station?
We have constant lighting, so the only time you really notice sunrise and sunset is if you happen to be looking out a window. In our crew quarters, we can keep them as dark or as light as we like. So we try to have lights on during the day and turn the lights off at night so we get a sense of a normal day.
I tell you, when they announced that, the kids were absolutely at the edge of their chairs. Couldn't believe that the astronaut is speaking back about how do you get used to light and day aboard the International Space Station. And those that are presenting to the International Space Station, a host of kids and the media and so on, you can see that they are really attracted. And look at the kids. They are absolutely turned on and tuned in during last year's contact with the Mendez Fundamental Intermediate School here in our local Southern California area. And the real key to make this happen, of course, are those hams that are behind all that gear. But the focus, of course, are the kids that are going to be asking their questions. And let me tell you, some of these schools present, wow, look at this gear. This is 59 seconds before the space station comes up. It's 2.7 degrees and 254 miles away. And it's going to be a 10-minute pass. And look at all the gear that they have. Multiple cameras on both the kids as well as the screen. And we've not done yet the screen where we see the astronauts live for the ham radio contacts. But who knows? With enough support, we very well could. And first, the astronauts will talk to the kids as a group. And they're fun in talking to the kids. You can tell by the smile in their voice. And then the kids have an opportunity to ask the big question, Brian, what do you do with your free time and how much free time do you have? Well, Brian indicated that he's into growing plants. So the kid came back and said, well, you know, how do you grow them? What goes on up there with plants?
This is Kilo Indio 7 Delta Delta Delta. Are you able to grow plants in the ISS? Over.
Yes, I was able to grow some lettuce not too long ago, and then one of my colleagues now, Tamitha Skov, the French astronaut, is growing some mustard seeds and some lentil seeds. It's actually students created the experiment for him to do, so he's doing that right now. Over.
Wow. Certainly made her day in having her question asked as to what's it like to grow plants on the International Space Station. Above all, the American Radio Relay League, ARRL, under its new CEO, is really reaching out. And they're asking all of you, if you think you've got a school in mind that could host a AMSAT, ARRL, NASA Space Station contact, for heaven's sake, tonight, log in to ariss.org and download hosting an ARISS contact, because you only have until this November 30th to get an introductory letter in. And it doesn't have to be the whole schedule and pictures of the school and stuff like that. It's just, I'm interested. I'm going to be your contact ham for getting it started. And as you saw in that past photo, ARRL folks are going to be there to do everything they can to make that contact work. So for those of you that got a school that is really tied into STEM, now we call it STEAM, and are looking for something in the future, maybe out of this world, consider the space station, the International Space Station. And some of the neat things you get, of course, will be your contact pin. Thanks, Rosalie, for this. And this is a gold one. And those that help out with making a space station contact, you can come up with this very significant, nice-looking pin. So that's my story. We'll see everybody next week. Next week is Veterans Day week beginning Monday. And those of us here on Ham Nation that have served will be in our veterans uniform, and our support hosts will have flags flying, and you never know what. And Don's already got his camo gear on for tonight. So, Don, what's happening with LDG, one of our valued sponsors? Don?
Yeah. Hey, good stuff, Gordo. I always love anything having to do with the kids. And that's the space station stuff is just the best way to do that. Yeah, we're going to talk about LDG Electronics and their antenna tuners. They're building a ton of antenna tuners, probably a few right now. They're a great company. LDG Electronics provides state-of-the-art automatic antenna tuners for every amateur need, from QRP to QRO, fixed stations, portable, remote. An LDG tuner will match your radio to your antenna with their lightning-fast proprietary tuning algorithms. Check out that LDG AT1000 Pro 2. That is the flagship automatic antenna tuner. It's made for QRO hams. That's high power, if you don't know what QRO stands for. It'll handle 1,000 watts sideband, 500 watts FM and digital. It'll tune from 1.8 to 54 megahertz continuously. That is continuously. And it'll match a Yagi, a dipole, an inverted V, a sloper, virtually any coax-fed antenna from 6 to 1,000 ohms impedance. Tuning time, under 10 seconds. Memory tuning, under 0.2 of a second. Has a large, easy-to-read bar graph watt meter with 2 selectable ranges, dual antenna switch, 2,000 memories for each position. And LDG is a family-owned and operated company. They're dedicated to bringing innovative quality products to the amateur market, and their focus is on anticipating and meeting your needs and providing you with world-class support. That is only a phone call or an email away, and all their LDG tuners carry a full 2-year warranty, and it's fully transferable. Chances are you're never going to need that warranty, but if you do, it's there. And if you ever sell or give away your LDG tuner, the remainder of the warranty goes with it. Free return shipping on all warranty repairs. All LDG products, including baluns and cables, are available for purchase through select resellers. So check out which automatic antenna tuner is right for you, and then go to ldgelectronics.com to learn more. That's LDG, Lima Delta Golf, ldgelectronics.com, and we thank them for their support of Ham Nation. I want to say a quick hello to our WTWW listeners on the big 5085. We appreciate everything that they do for us as well. Got some viewer mail that is just the coolest thing. You may remember the Pearson family. The Pearson family, that's the family who, one of the young Pearson boys won the ICOM 7610 at the Huntsville, Alabama Ham Fest. That is the card that we got in the mail today. Show that second picture, if you would, Vic, because that is the back of the card. That is a screenshot from their appearance on Ham Nation when they unboxed the 7610. So let me read this card to you. Here's what it says. You can show that other picture, too, and everyone can read along, Vic. Don and all at Ham Nation, I thought it was a great day when Dudley introduced us to you. I would never have guessed how that day would end up. We want to pass on our appreciation for all that you've done for us. We're so grateful for you sharing in and fueling the excitement on winning our first HF radio. What an introduction to Ham Nation. If you don't know about how they won that radio, it was the grand prize drawing Saturday at the Huntsville Ham Fest. And when the 10-year-old Brian, I believe it was, went up to get that thing, the whole auditorium erupted in applause. I've never seen so many people, myself included, happy for losing out on a ICOM 7610. But everyone was so thrilled that a young ham won it. So that was a great day. He goes on to say, our families received much joy through the use of the radio. We'll continue to share our new passion for amateur radio and Ham Nation. We are on the air and have begun our TXing and DXing. I love that. TXing and DXing. We hope to make HF contacts with you all. 73 Andrew, KN4VKX, Ryan, KN4VKW, Blake, KN4VKY, and Jacqueline. Jacqueline is not licensed yet, but I think she's working on it. So such a nice card to get from the Pearsons today, and they're just a great quality family. Show the back of that card again. What a great family shot this is. There they are. Man, just love those guys. So thanks for the card, Pearsons, and I'll definitely get you guys in the log here as soon as we possibly can, as soon as I get my antennas fixed back up. So good stuff. More good stuff from Newsline and Dr. T. So let's get into that right now. From Amateur Radio Newsline Report, number 2192. These are the Ham Nation headlines for Wednesday, November 6th, 2019. An encouraging update about the long-awaited 3 Yankee 0 India Bouvet Island de-expedition.
Bouvet is back. The 3Y0I de-expedition that suffered a last-minute cancellation from storm damage just as its vessel came within sight of the island is preparing for a second venture out. The team announced on its website that they're making plans and actively raising funds and are hopeful that the $170,000 price tag they need can be reached to give the de-expedition a second chance. The team said it needs only half that budget and is hoping to raise $85,000 in U.S. dollars using the GoFundMe website. The de-expedition isn't just about getting a coveted DX in the log, however. The team writes that members have been in contact with the Norwegian Polar Institute, the organization that monitors and protects the island and intends to collect scientific information as well to pass on to the Institute. The GoFundMe contributions have already started coming in, and hams are showing their generosity. But, as with the seagoing trip itself, there is still some distance to go. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Ralph Squillace, KK6 ITB.
Another de-expedition, this one on Pitcairn Island, has wound down, but not before leaving lessons with one group of youngsters in California.
The Pitcairn Island de-expeditioners are stirring the waters and the airwaves of the South Pacific, including during the CQ Worldwide SSB contest. The most eager pileup, calling VP6R, was perhaps assembled in Fontana, California, where third graders at the Dorothy Grant Elementary School, K6DGE, successfully got through in the days before the contest even got underway. The team reported that they had fun chatting with the youngsters and answering their questions. Teacher Beverly Matheson, WA6BK, had prepared the students with some history and geography lessons about the island and gave them the basics of radio communication protocol. The school has had the club since 2012, and its logbook is no stranger to going the distance. Over the years, students have made contact with Hungary, Argentina, and even the Falkland Islands. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Jack Parker, W8ISH.
So, you think the big deal at homecoming is football? Well, the International Space Station has that sport beat by not just a mile, but more than 200.
October is a time for college campus homecomings, so leave it to amateur radio operators to organize a very different kind of homecoming. At the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, New York, the hosting committee is comprised of cadets in the Academy's ham radio club, W2KGY. On the other end of the contact was NA1SS, Colonel Drew Morgan, a 1998 West Point graduate who was some 250 miles above Earth and his alma mater, aboard the International Space Station. Their 10-minute contact on October 19th had been planned since this past summer, even before Drew left the launch pad, heading towards the ISS. It marked the second time the Academy's club has had a QSO with the ISS. While the precious window for radio communications remained open, the cadets inside the shack at Bartlett Hall got busy asking questions about the space program and the ISS. One instructor sought any advice the astronaut might have for any candidate who might aspire to follow him into space one day. The communications window closed soon after, but you can hear and see the QSO by visiting the West Point U.S. Military Academy page on Facebook. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Kevin Trotman, N5PRE.
And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Ralph Squillace, KK6ITB, Jack Parker, W8ISH, Kevin Trotman, N5PRE, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW, 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation. Now here's the solar update from Dr. Tamitha Skov, WX6SWW.
The sun gets some bright new regions, with one of them being from solar cycle 25. And it's your last chance to watch Mercury cross in front of the sun for at least another decade. Those stories and more in the news this week. This forecast sponsored in part by Eric Johansson. Check him out at Instagram.com/Scubist. Space weather at Earth may be a bit on the quiet side this week, but at the sun, it's actually pretty exciting. As we flip to our front side sun, you can immediately see a couple bright regions, including a high latitude region in the southern hemisphere that's actually from the new cycle, solar cycle 25. And you can actually watch it. Pow, it fires a flare, and pow, it fires a flare again. This is showing stronger and stronger influences from solar cycle 25 that's up and coming. We're not there yet, but we're definitely getting closer. On top of that, we also have a coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone probably sometime next week, so we're going to have to wait for it. But as we switch to our far side sun, you can see we actually have yet another coronal hole that's going to be rotating into Earth view here in the next couple days, because we're kind of looking at the sun from the side with stereo here. And then also on the east limb of stereo's view, you can see yet another southern hemisphere high latitude bright region. And this may be yet another sunspot from solar cycle 25. And if that's the case, boy, it looks like we're going to be ramping up activity soon. Switching to your solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are dealing with a bit of disturbed conditions, pretty much from a remnant coronal hole that's kind of coasting through the Earth strike zone right now. At high latitudes, NOAA is expecting unsettled conditions with up to about a 25% chance of a minor storm, and that should settle down over the next couple days. At mid latitudes, we're also expecting unsettled conditions with up to about a 20% chance of active conditions. But again, this is pretty sporadic and it won't last all that long. Things should get pretty quiet as we move in through the weekend. And then as we move out of the weekend into the beginning of next week, and that's when we're going to have that transit of the Mercury across the sun on Monday the 11th. We're going to also possibly get a chance for some fast solar wind hitting from a coronal hole that will be a real coronal hole that will be rotating in through the Earth strike zone. So that's going to up our chances again to get some solar storms and maybe some aurora at high latitudes. Switching to your solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, everything is still in the green when it comes to big solar flares. We have no risk for radio blackouts right now because the sunspots that we've had on the sun, well, just like they always do at solar minimum, they appear for a few days and then they kind of submerge back down. So even though we had two sunspots, region 2750 and region 2751, they have both since decayed. So we are back to a spotless sun with just some bright regions. And unfortunately, even though this is good news for GPS users on Earth's day side, the reception should be good for you guys. The solar flux is tanking again, so we are just barely hanging on to marginal conditions right now, but within the next couple days, that solar flux will tank further, and sorry if you've been getting some decent propagation on the Earth's day side, it's going to continue to fall off the map easily over this next week and get back into the poor conditions, so you're just going to have to deal with it. We might get a reprieve when that other bright region that stereo sees will rotate into Earth view, but it's kind of hard to tell right now, so probably expect poor conditions to continue for the foreseeable future. Now also, because we are at solar minimum, we're getting a higher cosmic ray flux impingement than we normally would. So you frequent flyers, and this does include aircrew who fly over 800 hours annually and fly at high latitudes and high altitudes, you are in the moderate range for radiation dose, and this does include you prenatal passengers. So please take this into consideration in your flight plans. So although space weather here at Earth is a bit on the quiet side, back at the sun, things are getting kind of fun. We've had a couple bright regions on the Earth-facing disk, including one at high latitudes that is from solar cycle 25. As a matter of fact, it was actually firing off a couple B-class flares before it submerged below the surface again. And even on the sun's far side, we're seeing yet another high-latitude region in the southern hemisphere. So it shows us that the southern hemisphere, at least, is thinking of starting solar cycle 25. It's not quite there yet, but we'll keep watching to see if the activity continues to boost. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't mean that we've got this huge boost in solar flux, so amateur radio operators and emergency responders, you're still dealing with marginal radio propagation, and actually things are going to get a little bit worse before they get better. Expect poor radio propagation on Earth's day side easily over this next weekend, possibly longer. But at least you GPS users, you're living life right now because GPS reception all over the globe is looking pretty good. Now, also aurora photographers, well, you're going to have to not look for aurora for a little while unless you're at high latitudes. You mid-latitude folks, what you really need to consider looking at is up at the sun and watching that transit of Mercury across the sun's face on November 11th. I'm Tamitha Skov. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Dr. T. Always appreciate the report. She's a great follow on Twitter. You need to follow her if you can, at Tamitha Skov, and there's the spaceweatherwoman.com website, a great resource, and absolutely follow her on Twitter because she updates that all the time. Good stuff. Thank you, Dr. T. Always appreciate you. Let's talk about websites now. If you got a website, you probably need one. This episode of Ham Nation is brought to you by Hover. What's Hover? No, not Hoover. It's not a vacuum cleaner. Hover. It's a jumping off point for many entrepreneurs, and they want you to start your business with a domain name. Hover has over 300 domain name extensions to choose from when building your brand online. No matter what you want to build, there's a domain name waiting for you. If you want to start your own amateur radio show, go to hover.com/twit. Check out some domain names. They have hamradio.engineer and more. And if you're a designer or a creative professional, I'm a creative professional. I create radio commercials. So they have Wilbanks.design, oddly enough, is available. So you can use .design instead of the generic .com or .biz to showcase your passion and make yourself stand out a little bit more. You'll find excellent technical support available to answer any questions you might have. Their support team doesn't upsell you either. They only work hard to help you get online. Hover features free Who Is privacy protection, a clean and easy to navigate UX UI, monthly sales on popular top-level domains, too. Keeping your domain name separate from hosting gives you the flexibility to choose the right platform for your business. Nobody wants to be stuck with a solution that doesn't meet their needs. So make a name for yourself with Hover. Visit hover.com/twit. You'll get 10% off your first purchase of any domain extension for the entire first year. Hover.com/twit. That's HOVER. Hover.com/twit. 10% off your domain extension for a full year. And, of course, we thank Hover for their support of Ham Nation. I wonder if they have smokeandsolder.radio or smokeandsolder.design or something. George, you might want to check that out. That might be something to look at.
I actually did have smokeandsolder.com for a while, but never did anything with it. So, yeah, I'm a Hover customer myself, Don. I use it for all my domain registrations, and I got to say, I really like it. The registrar I was with before, they would just hound you to death. Every time it was time for renewal or something, they kept wanting to sell you all these different upgrades and add-ons to the package and one thing or another. But Hover, it's just straightforward. You just go there,
satisfied customer.
Get what you need and get it at a good price. And good. I'm not saying that because they're a sponsor. I'm a client, so I really like what they do. And I am also going to talk about some things tonight. I would call myself a client of this right here. Don, I've experimented with electronics for a lot of years and studied it in school. But one of my favorite... Okay, that's not supposed to happen. This is what's supposed to happen right here. One of my favorite resources was this right here. It was a Radio Shack engineering notebook that Forrest Mims III wrote. This is the 1980 edition right here. You used to could get these at Radio Shack. They had several different versions of it. This is the 1980 edition. A lot of good information in here, just, little circuits using different components. This particular book had digital integrated circuits. It had some analog circuits in it as well. Just a lot of different building blocks that you could use to experiment with integrated circuits and build different things. Well, Radio Shack's not so much around anymore. Yeah, there's maybe a few dealer stores around, and I think there is still a website. But you can't get this exact book right here from them anymore. I know you can't, because around 84, they split these up into individual notebooks right here. These were sold for 99 cents. This is a 1984 edition here that specifically covered 555 timers and ICs. And, you can build a lot of stuff with a 555 timer chip. And Forrest covered them all real well in here. A lot of good circuits, basically the same basic ones that were in the larger book. Now, you may ask yourself, well, how could I get that today? Well, I don't think you can. You could get them at Radio Shack when they were going out of business. But now, thanks to our friends at Master Publishing, W5YI.org, they've got Forrest Mims Engineering mini notebooks available that have a lot of these same projects and some newer ones in it as well. This one right here is volume 1. It's got timers, op-amps, optoelectronic circuits, and some projects, all written by Forrest Mims. And, of course, this is a brand new one right here, so, the pages aren't even yellow yet. A lot of good circuits, some that, I've used before, a lot of 555 chips, 556s, a lot of timer circuits, and it's also got analog circuits in it. There's the 741 and the 1458, real popular op amps for building a lot of different projects. He's got a lot of different information on there on how to build op amp circuits and other things like light activated relays here using a 741 and some sensors. A lot of light projects. You can even take both sections of a 1458 and use that along with a 386, Allen 386, which actually I've used here on Ham Nation before, to build a little audio amplifier. And you can make a percussion synthesizer out of it. Not very many parts in that either. Forrest has got just the details you need in there. A lot of these, he will include a formula that will help you determine exactly how to tailor the circuit for your specific needs. Here's low-pass and high-pass filters. Very simple to do. Waveform generator, square waves, sine waves. He's got optoelectronic projects in here as well. A lot of different things. Ultra-sensitive light meter, basic oscillators, free space links, transmitters using infrared or ultraviolet LEDs. A lot of different circuits in there that you could build. But the way that I use this thing, I built some of these individually, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. But when I wanted to create a project, I would go to this book and find several different pieces to build what it was I was trying to build, and just use these blocks and put them together to make what I wanted. Right here is one that I used at a radio station, a long time ago. I needed some kind of dead air sensor, and Don knows what I'm talking about, a silent sensor. Just so if something happened and you lost audio on the radio station, it would alert someone to, hey, there's dead air, go do something about it. I tried several different analog circuits and just really wasn't getting anywhere with it, and just happened to stumble across this one in one of the engineering mini notebooks. Missing pulse detector. It's nothing but a 555 timer and one transistor and a few components. All it really did, this circuit right here, is just look for a pulse every so often, and if the pulse arrived, it just kept resetting that timer so it never expired. Well, I decided, I can use that with audio. It'll think audio is just pulses to this thing. So I did that, worked out great. I used this to detect when audio had been missing for a certain length of time. And, I built another circuit in there. Actually, probably came straight out of this book, too. Just some kind of tone generator, an oscillator with a 555, just to give me an alarm tone that I could play through the PA system there in the building. And great little project. I've also used some building blocks out of here to build audio mixers before. There's even a circuit in here for building a little audio mixer. This one just used fixed resistors, but you could use potentiometers instead. But I used, some of the blocks in here to build stuff like that. Specialized audio mixers, one thing or another. I highly recommend, if you've been putting off experimenting with electronics and you've really wanted to do it for a long time, I can't think of a better way to do it than to use some of Forrest Mims' books, like these engineering mini notebooks right here. They help you bring together the pieces that you need to put a successful project together. He's written a lot of books. A lot of people have built these circuits that are in here, and it's got just enough details that you can create these projects at home, but you're not swamped down with unnecessary information. I've used it a lot, relied on them for years, and it's probably the first place I go when I want to build up some kind of quick circuit and put a project together. Why should I? I don't have all the circuits in my head here. I know it's going to surprise some folks, but I don't have all that knowledge. It's just floating around waiting to be, drawn out on a schematic without a lot of work. So, I'll take the book here by Forrest any day and put me a project together without a whole lot of thinking. Gordo, this is the same publisher that does your books. And you are kind of familiar with Forrest. He does all this stuff by hand, doesn't he?
He does. He does every one of those drawings and every one of his description of how that drawing factors into what they're building by hand. And if talking with Forrest, and yes, he loves to have contact with those reading the books through the W5YI.org system, he'll get a hold of you and he'll help analyze the circuit you've built from his books. But best of all, he's got a sense of humor like you do, and he does it all by hand. Long before they had the new computer program. So for those of you looking at what George was showing, that's actually Forrest doing it by hand. So as one of the fellow authors from the W5YI.org system, we sure encourage you to consider it if you really want to get technical and know that there's a man behind all of this who will actually speak with you if you first contact the W5YI group at 800-669-9594. Tell them Gordo and Ham Nation sent you, and you need contact with Forrest, and you'll be surprised. Forrest is very interactive with all hams. He's our kind of ham. George?
Wow, that's great, Gordo. Just looking here at the drawings and particularly at the text in here, I think whoever created the Comic Sans font probably plagiarized some of Forrest's writing here, because it looks, you would think this was done with a computer font, but no, all by hand. Makes it that much more fun when you're going to build these projects to have something that looks like down home, down to earth to help you get going. Well, I wanted to mention a couple of things here before we move on. Randy is still collecting your photos and descriptions of what you've been building, whether you used one of these books or not. If you're building something, why don't you send your photos to Randy, hamprojects@twit.tv, and you could be in a future episode of Show Us Your Projects right here on Ham Nation. He wants your photos. Let him know what you've been building, working on. No videos, please, but send your photos to Randy, and you could be on a future Show Us Your Projects. hamprojects@twit.tv. And we're going to be back in just a moment here, but first, let's get a message from ICOM.
Wish it, wrap it, gift it. Step up your gift-giving game this year and get your favorite ham, the transceiver, at the top of their list. ICOM offers a variety of high-performance and innovative products. Make the most of this holiday season with one of these ICOM rigs today. 'Tis the season to give your favorite ham the SDR they really want, the IC7610. This high-performance SDR has the ability to pick out the faintest of signals, even in the presence of stronger adjacent signals. The IC7610 is a direct sampling, software-defined radio that will change the world's definition of a SDR radio. RF direct sampling, 110 dB RMDR, independent dual receivers, and dual digicell. Ham for the holidays. The IC7300 is changing the way entry-level HF is designed. This high-performance, innovative HF transceiver with a compact design will far exceed your expectations. RF direct sampling, 15 discrete bandpass filters, large 4.3-inch color touchscreen, real-time spectrum scope, and SD memory card slot. The transceiver at the top of every ham's wish list this holiday season is the IC9700. Keep your competitive contesting edge with faster processors, higher input gain, higher display resolution, and a cleaner signal. ICOM's IC9700 is the pinnacle of perfection. 4.3-inch color touchscreen TFT LCD, dual watch operation, and full duplex operation in satellite mode. Real-time high-speed spectrum scope and waterfall display. SD memory card slot for voice recording and playback. Support for CW, AM, FM, single sideband, RIDI, and D-Star DV and DD modes. Visit ICOMAmerica.com/amateur for more information on all these great ICOM radios.
And ICOM invites you to enter in their drawings for some great swag prizes like T-shirts and hats each week by going to ICOMAmerica.com/HamNation. Register right there, and you could be in on the weekly drawings for great swag prizes, but you'll automatically be entered in the grand prize drawing monthly for a great ICOM radio. And for November, we've certainly got one here. It's the ICOM IC2730A VHF UHF dual band dual watch analog transceiver, simultaneous VHF and UHF, or VHF VHF, or UHF UHF receive. Simple operation with separate knobs and buttons for each band. It's got a large high contrast display, built-in weather alert function, and there's an optional Bluetooth board available as well. And, of course, there's free downloadable CS2730A programming software. So go to ICOMAmerica.com/HamNation after this and each episode of Ham Nation and register to win. Do it each week. You got 4 chances most months. ICOMAmerica.com/HamNation. And thanks, ICOM, for being a sponsor here of Ham Nation. And now here is Amanda with all the questions that are coming from you guys in the chat room.
Well, good evening, George, and hello to the other hosts, Gordo and Don as well. Let's see. We do have a couple things. I'm going to make some announcements. First of all, Gordo shouting out that phone number, all I could think of was 8675309. So if you were trying to remember that number, now you're really messed up.
You all call 1-800-669-905-94.
All right. Great. Thanks for repeating that, by the way. I think that was helpful for everyone. So next thing, just a quick announcement. N7XQA wanted us to know that his son, KF7TUP, just became a VE at the Maricopa Ham Fest. Congratulations. Woo-hoo! Thanks for doing that. We always do more VEs. And you never know when somebody's just going to say, I'm ready to take my test. And you got to get all those guys and gals together to put on that test. And thank you so much. All right, let's see. There was some talk in the chat room about women in radio and what can they do with radio. And it's pretty simple. We do whatever we want to with radio as long as it's within FCC rules. I think women do numerous different things, and we could talk for an hour about everything that we do. But contesting, doing anonymity in digital modes, just being prepared for your family per se. If you live in a rural area, it's probably sometimes your only means of communication. And other times, guess what? Women are sometimes a lot better at handling MCOM than men are. They can keep it together a little bit more, keep calm, and take traffic easier, and they can handle it better. That's my personal opinion. But anyhow, women can do anything in ham radio. Not only that, they can also go all the way up to the space station, be an astronaut, and be a ham radio operator. So how about that? It's possible.
I agree. In fact, Susie will hear stuff calling me in the radio room, and I'm all the way in the back room with her, and she goes, "Oh, someone's calling you in the radio." I go, "What? I can't even hear it." So, yes, women are the best. In fact, Amanda, secret, shortly, we're going to have an all-women's show. And you may be leading it. Oh, I'm not supposed to talk about that?
Oh, no, no. We can let the cat out of the bag. We are working on an all-YL show. That's right. I do have Dr. T confirmed. We're working on a few other extraordinary ladies. Perhaps maybe one from Newsline. And I don't want to give too much away because I'd really like it to be surprising about our special guest for that evening. But you got it. We're working on it. And it's been the most highly demanded show in the last 3 years. So I think it's time we deliver. Don't you, Gordo?
Yes, I absolutely agree, Amanda. You've got it.
All right.
And
well, we're working on it.
Wait, Amanda, another secret. I don't know if I'm supposed to let it out. Aren't we going to see you soon on Last Man Standing?
That's
you
right.
And Jeff?
That's right. We're headed out to LA in December. We're going to be on the set on December 10th, and we're going to be operating from the Last Man Standing studio. And guess who I have to work to beat? We have Hope Lee going out there this next week. Her and her father are headed out there. And if anybody's worked this family, you know they're hard competition. So I have her to beat in the number of contacts I can make. And I hope I don't look like a fool because she's good. She's really good at handling a pileup and making those contacts. So have fun, Hope and James. And I know you're going to have a great time. And the setup is so much better this year than the last time you were there. So it'll be a blast. Okay, so we did have a few questions for Bob. Unfortunately, he went off early. Understandable. He's just happy to be home, I think. So I'm going to go over just a couple of questions. And we always have so many new viewers that are new hams, and they need to know that they can just put up simple antennas. So I'm going to go around the table and see. You guys, I know, had simple antennas as your first antenna. And in fact, Don, you still have just simple wire antennas. So tell us, what was your first antenna that you put up?
Yeah, well, first antenna I put up was, for 2 meter 440. And of course, the first antenna was the rubber duck on the HT, but the first HF antenna. And, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, this antenna gets a lot of hate. A G5RV. You can put it up anywhere. It's 102 feet long, so it'll fit in just about any lot, really, for the most part. And it being a wire antenna, you put it up as an inverted V or a sloper, then you actually shorten that 102 feet. The antenna is still 102 feet, but because it's at an angle, it doesn't take up quite as much room. Wire antennas, you can bend them around, and it works great. 10 meters through 80 meters. And, I talked all over the world on a G5RV for the longest time. I still have wire antennas. I'll use wire antennas probably for the rest of my life. But, don't discount the G5RV, and don't be hating on a G5RV. That's a pretty little antenna.
Amen. We have one. We have one right now. That's our only communications on 80 meters. And it's so much more simple because we can just string it right up our tower. Yes, we have a tower and an A4S. Okay, whatever. But we do have a G5RV because it's really simple. George, what about you?
Well, if you're talking about new hams, I'm typically thinking, this is going to be a technician, someone who's going to primarily be doing VHF and UHF to get started out before they upgrade. So maybe, if you just got licensed and you just bought a rig, well, you're probably going to want to just grab an antenna there that you can get at the HamFest. But maybe your first antenna project would be to make a quarter wave ground plane. We've done it here before. Mm-hmm. You can use just an SO239 connector and some Romex copper wire and throw one together in, an hour or so. It's not much work, and it's kind of satisfying to see that you can build an antenna that really works very simply. And so that would be my tip. Not really talking about HF so much. Yes, all of my HF antennas are wire, and they all work well for me. But, for a beginner, I like quarter wave ground plane. It's just a good entry-level project.
Those roll-up J-poles, too, that you make out of twin lead work great, too. Especially you can put one of those in your go bag, or if you're going to be, taking your HT and you're going to travel, maybe spend some time in a hotel room with a suction cup, put that on the hotel room window, especially if you're, 25, 30 floors up. You can talk a long way on one of those guys. And if you're handy with copper wire and know how to solder, or not copper wire, copper tubing and know how to solder, you can make a copper J-pole, and it has some gain over that little ground plane as well. So there's a bunch of simple antennas that you can make if you're just a technician.
Absolutely. Yeah, and another place we should look is at the SOTA guys. They travel lightly up those mountains. I mean, here in Colorado, they're going 14,000 feet up, not everywhere else in the world, but they learned to make some pretty good antennas that don't take a lot to put together or to travel with. So, George, you had something else?
I was just going to say I've built J-poles myself, and, they can be a little bit more challenging because you're going to get some feed line re-radiation, some of the RF coming back down your feed line that can potentially cause some issues. But, if you hit it just right, a J-pole can be great and have a little more gain. But another thing about the quarter wave ground plane is not quite as bad about re-radiation on the coax, I don't think. But also that same antenna can be used for the 70 centimeter band, 440 megahertz. Now, the pattern is not going to be symmetrical. It's going to have more of a cloverleaf shape to it. But, you can do the primary 2 bands a technician would be starting out with right there on that one antenna for, just a few bucks.
All right. Gordo, what do you say? First good starter antenna.
One of our most popular antennas in ham classes that we've conducted across the country is a good old coffee can antenna.
What?
Yep, that's right, a coffee can. Now, wait a minute. This is plastic, so you got to do a metal one. I don't have a metal one, so live with it. Plastic. In the top of the metal plastic can bottom, you put the SO239, this connector here, and then you have capabilities of adding a 2-meter antenna, or collapse it down, a 440 antenna, or if you want a little bit more frequency gain, up to 220, you go in between 440 and 2 meters for 220. But it's a telescopic whip. MFJ DX Engineering has these whips. So you can sort of do your own thing. But it's all based on a coffee can, but it's got to be made out of the original metal. And in the base of the coffee can, this connector right here, and that's going to allow you to screw on all sorts of fun antennas. And then we have a contest as to whose coffee can has the best radiation to a field strength meter about 100 feet away. So fun project for kids. They love it, although they don't drink coffee at 12 and 13. They love stealing mom and dad's metal. It's got to be metal, not plastic, coffee can. And, of course, the coffee can itself acts as the perfect 50-ohm ground plane.
All right. And we shouldn't forget the tape measure antennas, right, Gordo?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, tape measure antennas are great as well. They're a little hard to feed because you got the rest of the stuff, but with a simple little whip antenna, you're on the air. 18.5 inches, 2 meters. They'll hear you all over the place, especially through repeaters.
Wow, that's amazing. I would have never thunk it. And I have never seen that posted anywhere, by the way. So that's a good one. Expert tip from Gordo. Thank you. Okay, let's go over. There's a couple nets not happening tonight. Kevin, KC7, FPF had to work late, so he said there's not a 40-meter net. Sorry, Prop hasn't really been there lately, though. Look on the 75-meter net at around 3905, I believe. If I'm wrong on that, you guys, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure that's where he's at. And 14 Charlie for the D-Star net and DMR on 31012. I do have 3 more things to say. First of all, my mom's birthday is Friday, November 8th. So happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday.
And my sister's flying in and we're having kind of a family shindig. And then we're going to go spread my grandmother's ashes who passed away this summer. So it's going to be a really special weekend. Second, November 8th is also the anniversary of the horrendous campfire. And I don't want to forget about that because there's about 85 lives lost. Numerous hams lost their homes. I do believe there was about 9,000 homes plus lost in that fire. And it was just so devastating. So I'd never want to forget that. And third, everybody, happy Veterans Day. Thank you for all of you that have served. We appreciate it so, so, so much. And our country wouldn't be where it is today without all of you.
Yep. Hey, chat room said that if you can't find a coffee can, go down to Lowe's and grab yourself a paint can. You might want to pour the paint out first, but you can always find empty paint. Seriously, empty paint cans. You can probably get those somewhere. So there's an idea. And somebody asked, can you take a plastic coffee can and coat it with aluminum foil? Probably could, but I don't know it's going to work real well. A paint can or a coffee can or any kind of a metal can would be a lot. But you can still get metal coffee cans. Lavazza, I see that brand a lot of times in the stores. It's a nice, they're smaller. It's not like a full pound.
There's the yellow brand. There's like a Louisiana brand that's a yellow can.
Yeah. Well, Bustelo, that's the one you're thinking of.
It has like the Chicopee or what is that stuff?
No, that's
what is
chicory.
It? Chicory, thank you.
The Bustelo is the yellow one. Yeah, the coffee with chicory. Okay. That's the New Orleans Cajun stuff. No, there are metal coffee cans all over the place. Yeah. So there you go. I guess we're done.
We are done.
Well, okay then. It just kind of came to a screeching halt, and there my face was on the screen. So, George, any final words for us tonight?
Well, a final question. I just wanted to ask Gordo, does the size of the coffee can, does that affect the resonance a lot, or is it broader banded than I would think?
No, I think there's definitely an electrical size versus the ground plane impedance versus the osmosis of the cosmosis of I just poke a hole in the coffee can, put an SO239, screw on an antenna, cut it to 18.5 inches, jam 440 into it as 3/4 wavelengths, and yahoo! It works.
Well, that really clears that up for me. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, that's.
So
I would ask Gordon if he had any final words, but I'm afraid he does. Gordon, any final words?
You just heard him. Back to you, Don, and everybody. Happy Veterans Day on the 11th, and chat room and everyone. I want those uniforms on, and if you are supporting as a non-veteran our American troops, we need your support as well.
Yeah, I am not a veteran. However, both of Dawn's brothers are Navy. And she's got a couple of cousins who are Navy as well. And my dad was World War II Army. My uncle was World War II Navy. And oddly enough, they found themselves together on the same island out in the Pacific during World War II, which is the only story Dad ever told about that. And since I found my birth family, my birth mother's husband, Ron, is a Marine from Vietnam, and he thankfully is still with us, and I'm very, very proud to have him as my second dad. So love the veterans and everything that they've stood for, and have given us the freedom to do what we do and play on the radio and everything else that makes life great. And you make life great too, and we appreciate you being here with us on Ham Nation. So for Bob, who skated out early, and for Vic and everybody else at Twit, we'll say goodnight, and we will see you next week, next Wednesday night right here on Ham Nation. So 7-3 all, good night. We love you, and we'll see you later.